but dreaming is just such unstructured thing that we don't even understand what it is. So I certainly think that augmented people would be able to dream. And I think that's one of the next steps for humans, not to be, not that AI will come and take our place, but that we will be just augmented, as we are augmented right now with these current tools. Because having ChatGPT as my editor definitely is augmentation of my writing capabilities. But the humanization, too much humanization of it, and we talking about it in this article, is that it just changes your perspective, and it actually limits you, because if you think just in this human-like, like in this mimic human angle, that's not very wide. You need to have a bigger picture. You just need to explore every possibility of the machine or the algorithm. And we as researchers should not limit ourselves.
Over 20 years of her career, Ksenia Se has donned many hats, from New York chief editor of a global media platform to fintech executive to PR director at Moscow's first contemporary art center to journalist and even to a Llama Walker. Regardless of her role, her passion for technology has always remained. In 2018, after a brief affair with blockchain, AI and machine learning caught her attention and became her fields of self-study. By 2019, she had started thinking about a media publication named Turing Post to feature digital avatars, articles written by robots, generative art, and more, but the technology wasn't there yet. Then in 2020, during the pandemic, Ksenia and Jesus Rodriguez conceived an educational AI newsletter. Named TheSequence, it became her gateway to machine learning, where she currently spearheads partnerships. When the buzz around ChatGPT grew, she revived her first idea and launched Turing Post, now serving as her AI canvas. As an avid learner, Ksenia helps readers understand AI's roots, its current impact on society, and where it might take us in the future. Importantly, she discusses how we might steer its course. Beyond tech, Ksenia champions citizen diplomacy. She firmly believes that even one person can affect change in the world. She's a board member at Track 2, an institute for citizen diplomacy, and is writing a book about its history. She's lectured globally, led the question editorially, and has articles in publications like Stratfor, Towards Data Science, Forbes, and more. Ksenia and I met through running newsletters that explore AI, and I couldn't be more excited to bring her on the show. We both share a passion for technology, curiosity, and learning. And if you haven't already, subscribe to each of our newsletters. The links will be in the description. In today's episode, you'll learn more about the history of large language models, known as LLMs, in addition to the importance of Alan Turing, how the Turing test is still relevant, and interesting questions Turing asked that we're still exploring. Ksenia also shares how she uses AI in her own work, thoughts on the future of humans augmenting our abilities with technology, and why we shouldn't anthropomorphize tech too much, but instead should expand beyond our human-like thinking to not limit ourselves and the possibilities of evolving with technology. One question we explore is, do machines think? Keep listening to find out the answer. Enjoy. What if this is all just a dream? Welcome to Creativity Squared. Discover how creatives are collaborating with artificial intelligence in your inbox, on YouTube, and on your preferred podcast platform. Hi, I'm Helen Todd, your host, and I'm so excited to have you join the weekly conversations I'm having with amazing pioneers in the space. The intention of these conversations is to ignite our collective imagination at the intersection of AI and creativity to envision a world where artists thrive. Welcome to Creativity Squared. It's so good to have you on the show today.
Hi, Hel. Very nice to be here, and thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, well, it was so nice. We actually met because we each have newsletters that explore AI. But for our readers and listeners and viewers who haven't met you yet, could you share who you are and your origin story?
Sure. So my name is Ksenia Se. I'm the founder and the main creative power behind Turing Post. It's a publication about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I've been doing so many things throughout all these years. It's even hard to find the place where to start. But my background is in journalism. And currently, my two passions are artificial intelligence and telling stories about it, educating people about it, understanding it better myself. And the second passion would be the citizen diplomacy, that it's not the part of this podcast, but I just want to mention it. It's important for me. My journey started as a young PR marketeer for the art center in Moscow. And since then, art and creativity was a very important part of my thinking, of my way of enjoying life. But since then, I've been doing journalism, and my main focus was always on technology. So at some point, when I moved to New York in 2018, and I've been living in New York before that, but that was sort of the second time when I moved to the city. There was the time of blockchain, and I started to work for a company that was creating financial analytics about digital currency, and they were using artificial intelligence to build this analytics. So, as a speaker for the company, I went to a lot of conferences, a lot of meetings, and I at some point realized that the main thing that I'm actually telling people about is not about blockchain, but it's about artificial intelligence and what is it, and how we use it, and what are the algorithms, and what does it mean. And at this moment in 2018, 2019, it was still very, very, the narrative was basically the same. It was as if artificial intelligence is going to come and conquer us. The Terminators are going to kill us. We will, become jobless and all that. But when I was looking at my iPhone, when I was thinking about Netflix and all the recommendation systems, it's just so clear that machine learning and AI is just such an essential part of our life, and we so close day to day to this technology that we need to understand it better. So I started to learn more about it, and as a journalist, I decided to analyze what's out there, what's what is there any industry that provides enough information about AI and machine learning. And it happened to be that there were the publications like Forbes that would push the agenda of killing machines or some hype topics. Or there was very, very technical, very interesting, but very technical publications like Tor Data Science, Kiddy Nuggets. And they extremely useful when you have some experience, but it's hard to it's just hard to dive headfirst into them when you don't really have enough knowledge. So that's how I came up with the idea to think about another media publication that would connect the dots between the people, all of the people who want to understand, and the technology. And as for my years, as I've been building communities and I've been working on these connections between different worlds, that's why I decided to do the same with AI and machine learning. So that's what I do. I build Turing Post, and I work on another project about citizen diplomacy with the institute, with Track 2 Institute for Citizen Diplomacy. And they might not be related from the first sight, but they all about us being a human and learning from the experience, learning from history, and building a better world.
And after you got into AI, you've had a couple different newsletters. You had the Sequence, and then you launched the Turing Post. So tell us about your foray into all things newsletters and AI.
I thought about what people know about artificial intelligence. And at this point, when I started to learn about it, it was around 2018. There was a lot of conversations about Terminators and how AI is going to make us jobless and all that stuff, and how they're going to conquer us. But at the same moment, there was a lot of machine learning stuff that were already here for many years, and all our iPhones. Basically, if you just look at your iPhone, if you think about what you use, if you think about Netflix, how that recommends all these movies to you, this is just like stuffed with machine learning and with all these algorithms. So this imbalance of information got me very curious, and I started to learn about the media publications out there. What is it that can give me enough information and just um, just provide this comprehensive overview of what's going on with machine learning and artificial intelligence. And there was really not that many places to go. There was the publications like Forbes with a lot of scary stuff. There was very deep dives like towards data science and Kitty Nuggets, wonderful publications. But if you don't know anything about machine learning, they're not really helpful at the beginning. So I sat down and thought about my own media publication, because I've been working in the industry for many years, and I've been editor in chief of large platforms where you can kind of build a community and involve people to share their knowledge. So I thought, if I want to do something about artificial intelligence and I'm not really an expert, I should build something with people who can explain it much better. So in 2019, I thought I created this concept about AI, media, and lab. And at this moment, I came up with the name Turing Post. I actually was going through my documents today, and I found this old presentation, and like everything is there. Everything that we work now with, I thought about it back then, like all the digital artist stuff, all the articles written by robots. I thought that would be just very cool to have this human and robotic side together, and just think about how we're going to um, go into the future together. Because if you think about artificial intelligence and machine learning, like back, it's been here for how many, 70 years, because it all started in 50s, and of course it was very different back then, but still a lot of technologies still have roots there. So starting my own big publication back then, it was kind of, I mean, I would have probably done it, but then the pandemic started, everything got closed. I was in the city by myself, alone, no one to talk to, really. Like, because before the pandemic, I would go to the Columbia University, I talked to people, they thought the concept was really cool. But then everything closed. You cannot talk to people anymore. Zoom is not very common yet. So I had a friend who is an expert in computer science and machine learning, and we started to talk. And he said, "Why don't we try? Why don't we try something on a smaller scale?" The newsletters just started to pop up at this moment. And he had a Medium blog. I had all this experience with like growing communities, growing media publications. So we decided to start together, and that's how TheSequence was born. And TheSequence, first it was just a part-time thing, because we didn't even know if there was interest out there. We didn't know if there was audience for that, but we decided to concentrate on the like education part. So he would write um, quite like in a plain language, plain English, explaining what is the concept, what is the research paper behind, like supporting this concept, and what is the technology that is using or based on this concept and on this research paper. And suddenly, like in a few months, we got a huge following, and in 6 months, it was like 50,000 people reading us. And the feedback was very good, and we started to do interviews. We started to reach out to startups to tell more about their stories. So that at some point just became my full-time job, because Jesus Rodriguez, who is the writer behind TheSequence, he has a lot of projects. He's like an entrepreneur with a bunch of businesses going on, and he just a very prolific and a very talented writer. So that was TheSequence, and people started to know us in the community, and it was an amazing feeling because it felt like in the internet era when just Google was just in the process of creation, and me talking to all these amazing data scientists, machine learning engineers, these young CEOs of these startups, felt like, in 10 or 20 years, they will be huge. They will be just like changing this world. But now they're so small and they're so eager to share everything they know, everything they building. So that was a very, very exciting moment of that. But I always kept thinking about the Turing Post concept because it was kind of wider. It was more like journalism about machine learning and artificial intelligence. It was more like a platform to give people space to go, not only to give people space, but also to do things myself, go deeper into history, go, cover business implementation, see how it can be implemented to art, because like also part of my journey was that I was working for some art institutions for a couple of years, and contemporary art and what's going on with the artist is always very close to me too. So when we understood that TheSequence has its audience, Jesus wants to go the same way with the educational angle, and I want to do something wider, we kind of split, and TheSequence is doing what it's doing, and Turing Post started to go and explore all these different corners of machine learning world and artificial intelligence. And we've started in late June. Now it's October. We have 30,000 readers, and it's all very fascinating.
Yeah, well, congratulations on growing your newsletter so much, out the gate. And we both use Beehive, which is a great newsletter platform that we both very much enjoy and recommend. And we'll be sure to include all the links in today's episode. Um, well, when we first connected, and we're going to dive more into some of the content in the series that you have on Turing Post, because it's really great and really in depth, and there's definitely a clear distinction between what we do on Creativity Squared and how deep you're going into some of these topics. But when we first connected, and I mentioned, the subject matter of how creatives are collaborating with AI, as a journalist and a non-native English speaker, you're immediately like, oh, it's helped me so much with my writing. So I was wondering if we could kind of start there, how you've personally used it as well in writing your newsletter.
Yeah. So writing is always easier for me in English because you have time to think. When you speak, you make mistakes and whatnot. But even if you spend many years writing in a foreign language, still you're not really fully um, capable of being as clean with all the grammar and all the coherence as you are in your own language. So for me, it would be always like you write a text, you write an article, and then you have an editor, and then you do another round of edits and another. So it's like very long process. So when ChatGPT appeared, it was very like people still talk a lot about how AI is going to do that, how we're going to, lose all our jobs. But I use it a lot and I just know that it's an amazing tool. And if you are a professional, that just enhance and augment your own professionalism and makes you better and saves you time. So I don't believe it's a matter of either or. It's just a matter of using all these tools for your creativity, for your precision, for your, saving you time and giving you more freedom, actually being like more creative with other topics. So yeah, it's it's been a great tool since then. And the way I interact with ChatGPT, it's first of all, I use a bunch of them, partly because I'm writing my Turing Post overview, which I call The Froth and the Daydream on Mondays, because The Froth and the Daydream is an allusion to the novel by Boris Vian. And it's like this, journey when everything is kind of uncertain. It can be either very solid and real, or it can be all just a dream. So because I write this every week on Mondays, I do overview of a lot of other newsletters, research papers, and tools that I'm writing about. So I'm using all of these generators and editors, um, and I just find it so much more convenient to kind of cross use, let's say Claude and ChatGPT, and then Bing for something else and Bard for something else, because they all can give you slightly different angle, and it's like having this team of people who just might give you crazy ideas, might give you absolutely worthless ideas, but that you're the one who choosing, and you're the one who just like, yeah, that may be interesting. Let me use my brain now and combine all these things and make it really interesting to read. So yeah, I find these tools to be a good team. I still have people working for me, of course, because it's just impossible to do only with the machines. But the machines are just a great supportive creative tool.
That's great. I love that. I know when I'm writing the subject line for the newsletters, instead of bugging a gal on my team of like, because I overthink the emojis, every word, I'll literally put it into ChatGPT, like a couple variations. It's like, which one is the best? And it will analyze them and tell me why one is stronger, what my goal is. So I found that just in getting feedback and in analyzing ideas that I come up with, like super
Yeah.
helpful and interesting. Um, do you have any like go-to prompts or things that you're always using them for with your newsletter?
I certainly use these special settings in ChatGPT Pro when you can just give as a permanent prompt to ChatGPT so it knows who you are, what you're working on, what do you like, how do you like it to be written, how do you like this thing to communicate with you. So this is very helpful. I do have a couple of prompts, but I first of all, I'm very like practical with it. So it's not that I'm creating with this something new that I am selling just as it is. I'm more like check grammar, don't change the style. Let's say that's my like biggest prompt. But then also what I do is that I write a little story how I would write it. Then I add small pieces of information that I want to include, and I say, okay, now like weave it together. And then when it does that, what I find interesting, maybe because when I was studying journalism, my specialty was like text analyzing. So I really can analyze text pretty well. And it's very easy for me to distinguish which text was written by ChatGPT and which one by human, because working with ChatGPT for the last 3-4 months, I actually know what words it likes to use, what structure it prefers, how it does it, and it's quite obvious. So when it gives you this, draft, it's very well. What I like how it does is like very well connects the things, and then you basically rewrite it to make it sound really interesting. Because if you just put it as it is, at some point it will be like all these, generated images. When you look at them, and they are different, but are they really? Because they all kind of look the same with all these Midjourney illustrations. So that's why also I don't believe we will be um, we will be challenged by AI so much, because it's still um, it's still pretty algorithmic. It's what it's doing. It is an algorithm. So
Yeah, I don't think that there's a word for uncanny valley for text, but you can definitely, I know I have an eye for some copy. I'm like, that definitely sounds like
yeah,
ChatGPT wrote that.
yeah,
Maybe we can coin a term for text that sounds too robotic or not. We've had corporate speak, then social media, which is more casual. Now we're doing natural language, and then computers
yeah,
reflecting natural language. So I'm sure a word
yeah.
will come out. Well, cool. Well, tell us, you have a great series on the history of LLMs, and your newsletter is named after Alan Turing. So why don't we dive into you did a special series on the history of LLM. So let's dive into what you covered there, and then where Alan Turing fits into all this, because our readers are not quite as technical as yours. So this will be a great introductory to kind of like the history of how we got to where we're at, and how or why ChatGPT was able to flourish as much as it did last fall.
Yeah. So one of the things that drive me writing the newsletter is because I feel this huge lack of knowledge. And this is my way to learn things. So I think if you really want to know some subject deep, you need to go into its history. So that was quite, and this was one of the first ideas that we came up with, that if we want to explain people what LLMs are, how they work, and where they taking us, we need to explain also where they're coming from. Because I see it as a complex thing when you need to see past, the present, and the future to make this whole to build this whole picture in your head. So LLMs at this point were blooming, hyping, and just the main conversation. So we just decided, why not? Why should just go back into the history and see how, like, where are the roots of exploration, of research for large language models. And the large language models are a part of a bigger thing, which is called foundation models. But we decided to start with language models. So our main focus was to see what has been done with language in terms of machine learning, and when did it start. So it turned out to be that this whole thing started from machine translation, and it's I highly recommend your readers to read this series. They are not really technical. We try to make it as comprehensive as possible, and also because it's a story, we wanted to put some highlights on people who were involved in creating this whole research and working on it. Because 40s, 50s, especially 50s, was so rich with these amazing scientists and researchers, and they all coming from different angles. At this point, a lot of terms were coined, and people started to think about automation and about how to try and build these computers that were on people's mind for centuries, actually, before that. And because the 20th century became this industrial revolution, we got power, we got things that we could work to actually like build these machines. And also we had these huge wars that actually required to have this special tools to be able to be better than your enemy. So machine translation actually became a really hot research topic when the war was when it was the Second World War, because Americans needed to understand what Germans were doing. And when the war was ended, when the Cold War started, that was very, very rich research and development stage, because how would you understand these crazy Soviets? What are they working on? How do we translate? Can we translate it much faster? So a lot of budget money was channeled to make it work. And when you read the history, you understand really. And some people know that like the internet was initially the governmental, the military network that at some point just became public, but all the research was paid by the governmental money. The same with artificial intelligence, machine learning in 20th century. DEPRA, the agency, was putting millions into research, and it was the way that, especially I think, was for some reason for Air Force. So they had these huge budgets, but they didn't have really a good strategy, because probably not very many people understood what is it, what is, like, where is it taking us. But they had a bunch of these smart, super smart people that were working on this algorithms and machine translation, on trying to making machines play chess. So the decision making process was just like, well, this is a good scientist, we give him money. And if the scientist says, well, this is another good scientist who has a good idea, we'll give money to him. So there was like basically no control. But because it was like just a small bunch of people who were all very interconnected, and they really were very interested in the research, like the money went the right way, but it was just very interesting to learn that there was like literally no understanding what's going on and how it can be used, which eventually led to AI, the first AI winter, because the expectations were so huge. They thought that machines would just become this, actual part of our life immediately, but the computational power was not there. There was not enough even data, but mostly computational power was just the compute was just not enough. So, but going back to Alan Turing, what always fascinated me is that he was um, such an outcast, basically, but he thought of the machines and of their capability to think very early. So he wrote this paper, I have it right here, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, published in Mind, a quarterly review of psychology and philosophy. So these were the places where people would publish their papers about machine learning, because there was, in 50s, there was no such area of science. There was no such science as computer science, basically. So he was the first who asked this question: can machines think? And of course, we have a long history before that of human-like robots, of automata, of even Frankenstein is partly sort of artificial intelligence, because it's just this constant desire to build something that can think, that can be as human. But um, he thought about it the way that we're thinking about it now. So I was reading this paper, and the questions he poses is just the same questions we either just solved or we're still coming to solve them. So if you think about it, it's 73 years ago. This person just, um, the war just finished, basically. He worked so hard on Enigma and on this deciphering machine that helped crack the German code. And he just never stopped. He was just in his mind, machines could think. In his mind, that was all happening. He didn't have enough resources. He probably didn't have enough support, but it's fantastically contemporary paper that he wrote 73 years ago. So my intention was to, like, the whole intention of Turing Post is to connect the dots. So I thought that people should know what Alan Turing was up to, what he was thinking about, what John von Neumann was thinking about, how all these amazing people were working together, what happened on this Dartmouth conference that literally, changed the world. And that's when artificial intelligence, at least as a term, started. Because it still comes to us, all these ideas, we're still working on them. So I always believe that if you learn what people were thinking about and it's still not done, you can just take this idea and maybe now we can do it. So yeah, I believe Turing would be really fascinated by what's happening right now with all this Gen AI.
I'm sure. Well, thank you so much for doing a deep dive and history and preview of what's in your LLM's history series. Well, one question following Turing, because you mentioned that there's a few questions that he posed that we're still working on today, and I was wondering if any stood out to you as being like really interesting, or that you think will solve soon, or just like interesting questions that we're still working on that you can share with us?
Um, I think what is interesting is the conversation that's ongoing about the intelligence and what is it, what the intelligence is, what consciousness is, and if it's really important. Because for Turing, it was not as important. Um, it was not actually about like the machine's actual thought process, but it was more about the ability to mimic human-like responses. So in terms of Turing test, um, I believe these large language models can pass it because they are really well mimicking humans. But it's funny, can machines think? I don't think we have answer to this question, and this is still the biggest question, because we don't really know what intelligence is and what consciousness is. So um, I think coming from Turing and still ongoing, we just need to think about these questions, and that would be this huge discussion for the next couple of months, years, because um, if we know, like when we answer these questions, we would probably know more about how we're going to live with these machines and how we want to limit or not limit them. And also, maybe we shouldn't think in human terms if we're speaking about machines, because um, somehow a lot of people apply that machines would be bad to humans, that would like to to extinguish us. But it's a human way to think about other things, because we want to dominate. Who told us that the machines wants to dominate us? They are machines. They might not think that way, if we can say that. So that's I think what would drive the research and all the philosophical environment around it.
Yeah, I love that with these chatbots and whatnot, and where we're at with the current AI, it's just a big mirror. And we, like what you said, we haven't figured out what consciousness is, intelligence, and with AI, it's just a big mirror showing us back who we are, the way that it's been trained through the internet, but also what we don't know about ourselves. So I think it's just a really interesting time, really what we're learning about ourselves, or the gaps that we still have yet to learn, using AI as a mirror.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, we're learning a lot about ourselves.
Oh, and I was speaking to someone the other day, and she said something interesting, that at the Industrial Revolution, we were comparing humans to machines and now machines to humans. Yeah, now. But I like what you said, that maybe we shouldn't center ourselves around the language for machines, but that's so human to center ourselves at the same time.
It's quite interesting that the imitation game paper by Turing was published in Psychology and Philosophy, um, because is it really, maybe we should just come up with a machine psychology, and this different type of philosophy, and not depend on our human flawed psychology and psychology philosophy.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know what the Turing test is, I think it's worth explaining, because it has a lot of implications right now, with how we do interact with AI, specifically through the chatbots. So, can you, for those who may not know or may not have seen the movie The Imitation Game with, actually, I don't know if that's covered in that movie, but The Imitation Game with Benedict Cumberbatch is a great feature film on Alan Turing. If you haven't seen it, definitely recommend. But what was the other movie? Oh, Ex Machina. Ex Machina does an amazing job exploring the Turing test, and I highly recommend that film for anyone who hasn't seen it. But I digress. Tell us what the Turing test is.
Yeah, I love the Imitation Game movie, but it doesn't cover the Turing test. It's focusing on the developing the Enigma machine, the translator, the translation machine, and the Turing test um, is also called the imitation game. Is when you text chatting with two people, entities, someone in separate chat rooms, and one is a human and one is a computer, and both try to convince you of their humanity. And if after this conversation you can reliably tell who is who, then the machine is said to have passed the Turing test. And um, again, I was saying that before, but this test is actually underpins the foundation questions. Can machines think or behave like humans, but in terms of not actual thought process, but can they have this ability to mimic human-like responses? And the capabilities of current foundation models, and just for the audience to understand the difference between foundation models and large language models, is that foundation models is just wider term for text, image, video, sound, and when large language models is just about text. So currently the capabilities are so huge, and especially now when we're coming to this multimodality world, when we can do text to image, text to video, image to video, text, or whatever, and just this whole mix of things. I think it's we can say that they can mimic humans pretty well. Now there are. I'm not really aware of a good like next step after the Turing test. Um, but what you said about Ex Machina, again, I think the idea of Turing test is very well implemented in it, but also the view is very, very human way of thinking, because for some reason we just assume that this machine would want to um, act like a human, and that she has all this, billion thoughts. But how do we know that it has it? It might have a completely different psychology. I mean, so I'm kind of struggling with myself right now, because we also published a very good article about anthropomorphizing artificial intelligence. And it's a big and very important question, because when we speaking about the machines using she, he, that's like making it human-like already. When we say they think, when they say they can hear us, speak to us, that's like making them also human-like. So we already make them kind of pass the human-like test, because we make them human-likes. But that's not the right language, actually. I think we might need to come up with a better wording for it, because they can't really hear, they can't really talk. There's something, and I don't really know what's the right thing to how to talk about it, but we should not anthropomorphizing it just too much.
Well, I know Rafiq Anandal, who came up in a conversation for a recent podcast. He's an AI artist, and he really explores the question: if machines dream, what does that look like? And I love that question. It kind of captured my imagination, but it's so nicely. I guess it's still associating human dreaming to machines, but I still love that question that he explores. Um, and we also had Eric Solomon as a guest on the show. And one of that episode was AI will never be human. And he found it actually problematic that if we think the machines are responding as like human like, especially when it comes to empathy, and we might not tell the difference, that's not good for us because we need to connect with people who have lived experiences and who are empathetic and whatnot. So it's definitely an interesting time to explore these subjects of what it means to be human, and what Turing poses of if we can't tell the difference, does it even matter? But I think I lean towards Eric that it does matter, especially on certain subjects that we're connecting with other humans, especially on an empathetic level. But curious your reaction or thoughts.
Yeah, Rafik Anandal, I really love his art, and I think this exploration of this huge mass of data and how he proceeds it through his creativity, it's a pure creation just based on a completely different media. And the artists are always famous for playing with different media. So in that sense, I can just admire how he utilized what he has with all this machine learning experience he had. Um, can machine think would be it's funny. I kind of think that machine can think because we can build an algorithm and it's just more direct um, to construct this thinking process, especially for a task. But dreaming is just such unstructured thing that we don't even understand what it is. So I certainly think that augmented people would be able to dream. And I think that's one of the next steps for humans, not to be, not that AI will come and take our place, but that we will be just augmented as we are augmented right now with these current tools. Because having ChatGPT as my editor definitely is an augmentation of my writing capabilities. Um, but um, the humanization, too much humanization of it, and we talking about it in this article, is that it just changes your perspective and it actually limits you because if you think just in this um, human like in this mimic human angle, that's not very wide. You need to have a bigger picture. You just need to explore every possibility of the machine or the algorithm. And um, we as researchers should not limit ourselves. And we as humans, and I think especially it's important to observe kids, how they interact, how they learn empathy. We can teach them some basics, how to show emotions, how to talk about your feelings, how to show empathy. Um, but it's basic thing. You really learn how to do it just getting this experience human to human. And sometimes it's enough to yell at your Siri and just let out the anger, but it's not therapeutical like in the long term. So you can use these tools as support, I think, but I'm doubtful about all this AI assistants that some companies working on that are supposed to be like your therapist, like your friend. I find this concept very scary, not because it's really going to happen. I think if it's just a supportive role, it's amazing, as having your GPS navigator is helpful. But also, it cannot just be the only thing. You still need to be able to see this world and this beauty and this variety of things.
And I reference movies a lot just because they're such an easy, I guess, reference point, for lack of better words. But what you said, like humans are limited. I think sometimes we don't like to think of ourselves as limited, but we are. And one movie that came to mind as you were saying that is Lucy. I'm not sure if you've seen it. It's got Scarlett Johansson in it. And I think it does a good job of capturing, you know, like, the possibility of machines doing so much more, although it was technically like a human brain at a larger scale. So maybe that's not the best reference point, but that we're just so limited and even thinking about machines. But then, you know, if I think this is one of the interesting um, parts of this conversation is, well, if we can't imagine it because of our own limitations to our imagination, like what's beyond our imagination and what's the reference point to get there?
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't think we've figured that out yet. So I think that's an interesting thing, and you know, new discoveries or something might help us with the imaginative bridge to really understand. Um, there
Yeah,
was one. Oh, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
think if I want the viewers to remember one thing, is I think that's why the history as a part of education is so important, and that to really understand what's going on and where are we moving to, is to have this whole picture um, in front of your eyes, because that what actually gives you more space, gives you more freedom to think, gives you the opportunity to be more creative. Um, because um, it's the way we can think about literacy at some point. Just let's say, I'm not sure if my numbers are right, but let's say 10% or 5% of people know how to read and write. And they had this freedom of creating new stuff. Now, I think that's what actually the artificial intelligence brings us, this new level of literacy, which, if we use it properly and if we let ourselves use it properly, I think that will widen our imagination, our creativity. It will give just more people um, even the opportunity to be more human, to realize what are the flaws that we are so scared of, because that's exactly why we're afraid the machines. We are afraid that they will take all the bad parts from us. Maybe we just need to realize them, and educate ourselves, and become better people.
I love that. Uh, and one thing that I heard that I thought was a good example of what machines in the positive possibilities. It's a researcher from MIT, Raman. He said, like, could you imagine instead of just one Einstein trying to understand, you know, the nature of reality, that you have 10 Einsteins that are trying to figure this out. And with all these AI tools, we're going to have he used the reference point of Einstein, but like all these Einsteins working on some of the biggest questions that we haven't figured out. And you know, I found that as like a great reference point to help bridge what could be as well. Um, but I love what you said. Just be better humans. That will be a good starting point.
Yeah, but that's what moved the world. The literacy moved the world so much further, because in 20th centuries, when so much more people learned how to read, how to write, this whole revolution of technologies happened. So that's our next literacy.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, it has been such a pleasure having you on the show. I'll be sure to put the links to where everyone can sign up for your newsletter and do a deeper dive into the subjects that you spoke on today, and vice versa for anyone listening that's new to Creativity Squared. We're going to cross-promote the interview on both of our newsletters and platforms, and it's been such a pleasure. So thank you for sharing some time with us today and giving us a preview of all the good stuff that you have on Turing Post.
Thank you so much, Helen. That was a pleasure and interesting talk. Yeah, I think we need to think more about AI and creativity and how we can use it our best.
Oh, we'll have you on the show again to do a deeper dive on that conversation, because I'd love to talk with you about that too. So, well, thank you again. Thank you for spending some time with us today. We're just getting started and would love your support. Subscribe to Creativity Squared on your preferred podcast platform and leave a review. It really helps. And I'd love to hear your feedback. What topics are you thinking about and want to dive into more? I invite you to visit creativitysquared.com to let me know. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter so you can easily stay on top of all the latest news at the intersection of AI and creativity. Because it's so important to support artists, 10% of all revenue Creativity Squared generates will go to ArtsWave, a nationally recognized nonprofit that supports over 100 arts organizations. Become a premium newsletter subscriber or leave a tip on the website to support this project and ArtsWave. And premium newsletter subscribers will receive NFTs of episode cover art and more extras to say thank you for helping bring my dream to life. And a big thank you to everyone who's offered their time, energy, and encouragement and support so far. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. This show is produced and made possible by the team at Play Audio Agency. Until next week, keep creating.